The escalating shadow war between Russia and the UK. In the dimly lit corridors of geopolitics, a shadow war unfolds, shrouded in layers of denial, subtle provocations, and chilling overtures of retaliation. Last week marked 1,000 days since Russia launched its full-scale invasion of Ukraine, a war that has not only ravaged Ukrainian cities, but shaken the very foundation of international peace. Yet, as the war grapples with this stark reality, another disturbing question surfaces. Is Russia already at war with the United Kingdom? The signs are there, veiled in cyber attacks, hybrid warfare, and eerie threats of escalation. President Putin, a master of ambiguity and power plays, seems to be weaving a web of chaos that entangles not just Ukraine, but the West, particularly the UK. This isn't the loud clash of armies on open battlefields. It's a quiet, insidious struggle where fiber optic cables mysteriously sever, energy grids falter, and the specter of nuclear retaliation looms ominously. For months, Russia has intensified its assault on Ukraine, firing indiscriminate glide bombs and targeting civilian energy infrastructure with surgical precision, acts widely condemned as war crimes. Over 10,000 Ukrainian civilians have lost their lives, and millions face the harrowing prospect of winter without heat or electricity. Amid the chaos, experimental weapons like immediate-range ballistic missiles have entered the fray, turning Ukraine into a grim testing ground. Each missile strike echoes like a grim symphony of devastation, a reminder of the high stakes in this conflict. But the battlefield is no longer confined to Ukraine's borders. Just last week, Baltic Sea fiber optic cables linking NATO nations were mysteriously severed, a move widely attributed to Russian hybrid warfare. Germany's defense minister minced no words, scoffing at the idea of an accident. The damage mirrored earlier sabotage attempts on gas pipelines and communication networks, acts that NATO intelligence links to Russian spy vessels prowling the seas. One such ship, the Yantar, a so-called oceanographic research vessel, recently loitered in the Irish Sea, drawing alarm in military escorts. These covert maneuvers hint at a broader strategy, a shadow war targeting the UK's critical infrastructure. From cyber attacks on councils in Middlesbrough and Portsmouth to incendiary devices concealed aboard aircraft, the fingerprints of Russian operatives are unmistakable. MI5's Ken Callum has openly warned of a sustained mission to generate mayhem on British soil, and NATO's Security General described an intensifying campaign of sabotage across Allied territories. Each act chips away at the illusion of normalcy, pushing Britain closer to a reckoning with a rogue nuclear power. The chilling reality is that Russia views Western support for Ukraine as an existential threat. The delivery of British-made Storm Shadow missiles to Ukraine marked a turning point. When these long-range missiles struck targets within Russia, the Kremlin's rhetoric shifted dramatically. President Putin declared that countries arming Ukraine, implicitly the UK and US, were now legitimate targets for retaliation. His words were chillingly specific, threatening strikes on military facilities and nations supplying Kiev with advanced weaponry. The subtext was clear. The UK had entered a dangerous new phase in its confrontation with Moscow. The specter of escalation doesn't end there. Russia's retaliatory capabilities extend far beyond conventional warfare. Cyber attacks, sabotage, and espionage have become its weapons of choice. Earlier this year, Russian-affiliated hackers launched a crippling cyber assault on Texas water utilities, a stark reminder of the vulnerabilities in critical infrastructure. British businesses, too, face growing threats from Kremlin-aligned hackers who operate with impunity as long as they serve Putin's interest. The stakes are not lost on the UK's military establishment. Despite being at its smallest size since the 1700s, Britain's armed forces project readiness to confront Russian aggression. Yet the strain is palpable. Recent cost-cutting measures have reduced the UK's military capabilities, even as NATO conducts live-fire exercises in preparation for a possible escalation. Deputy Chief of the British Defence Staff Rob Magowan's assertion that Britain could fight tonight underscores the gravity of the situation, but also raises questions about whether the UK can sustain a prolonged confrontation with Russia. Meanwhile, Putin's threats grow bolder. The recent deployment of Russia's experimental Orshnik ballistic missile, described as impossible to intercept, signals a chilling escalation. With cluster munitions targeting Ukrainian civilians and energy infrastructure, Putin demonstrates a willingness to push boundaries, testing not just Ukraine's resilience, but the resolve of its Western allies. Britain's involvement in this shadow war has not gone unnoticed. The capture of a British national fighting for Ukraine, a former soldier named James Scott Rise Anderson, has added another layer of complexity. Anderson's capture in Russia's Kursk region, now a contested battleground, underscores the human cost of this conflict. His father's plea for his safety resonates with countless families caught in the crossfire of geopolitics. Yet this is no mere proxy war. The UK's direct support of Ukraine, military aid, intelligence sharing, and advanced weaponry has blurred the lines between ally and belligerent in Moscow's eyes. The stakes are existential for Russia, whose war effort relies heavily on North Korean troops, Iranian drones, and a propaganda machine spinning tales of Western aggression. As the conflict drags on, Putin's desperation is evident. High casualty rates? An estimated 735,000 Russian soldiers killed or wounded strained his military to the breaking point, forcing the Kremlin to resort to increasingly reckless tactics. But what happens when the shadow war turns overt? Last week, Russian officials hinted at targeting decision-making centers in Kiev, with the thinly veiled implication that Western capitals could be next. This rhetoric, coupled with a possible shift in Russia's nuclear doctrine, raises the specter of an unprecedented crisis. Mutual assured destruction may deter an all-out nuclear exchange, but the risk of miscalculation grows with each provocation. The UK finds itself in a precarious position. On one hand, it must uphold its commitment to Ukraine and NATO's collective defense. On the other hand, it faces a relentless adversary willing to exploit every vulnerability, from underwater cables to social media misinformation. The severing of ties, both literal and figurative, between Europe and Russia has plunged the continent into a new era of uncertainty, where alliances are tested and the cost of peace becomes increasingly steep. As winter descends on Ukraine, the stakes grow higher. Russian airstrikes on power grids threaten to plunge millions into darkness, a cruel weaponization of the cold. For Ukrainians, the war is a daily battle for survival. For Britain, it's a question of how far it is willing to go in confronting an adversary that stops at nothing. The lines between war and peace, ally and enemy, have never been blurrier. Putin's strategy hinges on Western fatigue. He gambles that prolonged conflict, economic strain, and political divisions will erode support for Ukraine. The looming return of Donald Trump in the White House only adds to the uncertainty. Trump's transactional approach to foreign policy and his skepticism of NATO commitments could reshape the geopolitical landscape, leaving Britain and Europe to confront Russia without the full weight of American support. In this complex tapestry of war, diplomacy, and brinkmanship, one thing is clear. The UK is no longer a mere observer. Its role in arming Ukraine, coupled with its vulnerability to Russian hybrid warfare, has made it a key player in this unfolding drama. Whether through cyber attacks, sabotage, or overt military threats, Russia's shadow war against the UK is real and escalating. The question now is not whether Britain will respond, but how, and at what cost. As the world watches this high-stakes game of power and survival, one truth emerges. The chilling signs of war are no longer confined to the battlefields of Ukraine. They echo in the quiet sabotage of infrastructure, the veiled threats of retaliation, and the resilience of nations standing against aggression. This is not just Ukraine's war or Russia's gambit. It is a reckoning for the principles that underpin the global order. In this shadow war, every move counts, and the stakes couldn't be higher. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the unfolding tensions between Russia and the UK, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to our channel for more captivating analysis of global events. Share your thoughts in the comments below. Your engagement helps us uncover the stories that matter most. And as always, thank you for watching.